Item under A, roll call. Members present. Got listed who's here, who's not.
You're active if you want to just
Okay.
name.
Okay. Alderman Thino, Alderman Smith, and Alderperson Reardon. In Bradstrup, and recording secretary, or
Just for clarification, those would be commissioners.
just commissioners? Okay.
Yeah.
Is Brad not, so you would need to identify Brad then? He's not really.
No, he's a member.
He's a
Lieutenant.
Didn't mean that wrong there. You're here, so. Okay, B, approval of the agenda. Approval of Monday, February 11, 2019, traffic, bicycle, and pedestrian commission meeting agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Can you hear your voice then if they're not, a small group here, or does that work?
Probably not, but we're able to track for the record, so
Pretty small.
I think it'll be fine.
I don't know if you need to have it on the mic for
Right.
a public record.
I did not, but if we would like to go Dan real quick, let me see. We're 2 over. Dan, did you want to make?
Move approval.
And then
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 3, approval of the minutes of the Monday, January 21st, 2019, Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission meeting minutes. Do I hear a
Move
motion to
approval.
approve?
Second.
Motion been made, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. D, regular business, referred back from study. Consideration of possible action on the request of Alderman Dwayne to install a left turn signal on Alpine Drive to East Mason Street.
okay, this comes to me. Now I need to change the. I think it goes to podium and send live. Okay, so I'm going to direct your attention to the monitors, and the item in question is the intersection of Mason Street, East Mason Street, and Alpine Drive, and very close to the I-43 East Mason Street interchange. It's the first signal to the west. Question for the commissioners. I'm not sure if you saw, but I did attach the full report to the agenda as an agenda item, so I was hoping that you had an opportunity at least to read the recommendations and the conclusions, but for sake of the meeting, I'm going to give the Reader's Digest of the study itself. So we've identified the location, and East Mason Street is a principal arterial in the city. Alpine Drive is categorized as a urban collector street. So I'm going to get back up to the map here so you can see the intersection a little bit closer. I just want to identify the lane configuration so everyone's aware of how the signal is laid out and how it operates. So East Mason Street has 2 through lanes in each direction, one the eastbound and westbound directions. Also has dedicated left turn bays, which are also signalized with permissive protected left turn arrows. And then there are dedicated right turn lanes on East Mason Street. Moving to Alpine Drive, it's hard to see from this image, but it's actually demarcated as 2 lanes. Through movements can take place out of any of those lanes, but the left turn obviously is from the inside lane, and right turn would be out of the curb lane. It's identical on both north and south approaches for the intersection. So the reason this is here is that there have been some complaints relative to the delay time, the queue lengths during school release times. And as you may be aware, Edison Middle is north of the intersection, and a little further away and west would be East High School. So the signal phasing, or Preble, sorry, yeah. Anyway, and that's a error in the report, so I want that to go on record that the report notes East High School, but it actually means, it's supposed to mean Preble High School. So the signal phasing it would be as follows. The beginning of the cycle, basically the beginning of how the displays are portrayed, would be you have leading lefts on East Mason Street, so you have a green arrow followed by a yellow arrow, and then it goes to a circular green indication for the east and west movements. As those terminate, then it's circular green for both north and southbound for Alpine Drive. So pretty common phasing for what you'd see for an intersection such as this. Now it operates in two different modes. It operates in what we call a coordination mode or a chord mode during most parts of the day. So the morning peak, the afternoon peak, and the PM peak will operate in chord mode, meaning that there is a fixed cycle length and that allows for certain time windows for the side streets to get greens. Otherwise it defaults to the green on the main line. That allows East Mason Street to have what we call progression along there that minimizes the number of stops for people on East Mason Street. Now the exception to that during the day would be for those school peaks. So during the morning peak, which is 7 to 8, and from 2:45 to 3:45, actually that's what the analysis periods would have been, but the signals operate slightly before and after that. We try to accommodate the peak, and the peak just happens to be 2:45 for the school release and 7 to 8 for the morning to accommodate for that. And it goes into what we call free mode. In free mode, it actually goes out of cycle length from the rest of the system and responds more on a dynamic level based off of the traffic volumes that are present. So if there's more traffic on, say, the side street, it's going to accommodate it a little bit more. It'll extend the time. There'll be minimum times. It'll extend it, and then there will be a defined maximum period that if it's at saturation, you eventually has to cut it off and put the green back over to Mason Street. So in this case, we do have those two peaks set up. We have them in the or it's programmed into the controller, what we call a max 2 timing. So anyway, getting on to how we evaluated the intersection, we used what's called level of service methodology, which really is a quantitative measure of delay. So the higher the delay is, the more or lower of a grade you're going to get. So think of like in school, A, B, C, D, E, F. If you get an A, that means you got almost, very free flow, laminar type flow for your traffic, versus F, which is complete breakdown and failure. So the report does describe what each of these levels are and what it would feel like to the motorist, and then defines it as the in terms of seconds per vehicle. We call that control delay. So I set it up as 5 different scenarios or 5 different options. The first being the existing option, which I think is quite obvious what that would be. It is what we have out there today. During this afternoon peak, I guess I'll backstep just one sentence here. 2:45 was the higher of the 2 peaks for the schools, just because that's usually when you have the exodus or the release time, you usually have more of a concentrated peak. So only the 2:45 to 3:45 time period was actually evaluated. So existing option, basically just looked at the way it's programmed at 2:45 and evaluated. The second option, which I call the optimize existing timings option, was I used the basic timings within the controller. That's like your mins, your maxes, your extension times, things like that under the free mode, and had the software optimize the timing. The third option, similar to that, what I call optimized low cycle. And that is basically kind of wiping out some of the basic programming and kind of starting over, going with some lower min times and then just wiping out the max time and having it have the software optimize. Fourth option would be what the request was actually for evaluating, adding that left turn arrow. So that involves changes to the traffic signal displays, would result in an improvement project to have those added. It also means that the lane configuration would have to be changed in that southbound movement. And in this case, the way that we would do it would be to change it from, instead of a through right configuration for those two lanes, it'd be a dedicated left turn, and then all those through movements get put into the curb lane. There are other ways to do it, but based off of experience, they're much less efficient, so I didn't even explore those options. This would be the closest you would probably get. And then the last option is really no different than that southbound lead, but then like the optimized low cycle, I'm taking out, kind of wiping out a lot of those basic timings and starting from scratch and having the software do the optimization into a lower cycle length. So the results are basically contained here in Figure 4, and you can see the options are listed right here. And so to make things easy, what you see bolded and highlighted are actually what were the best outcomes. So the optimized low cycle, in essence, pretty much won in every category, with the exception of, which probably makes sense, would be that southbound lead low cycle option. And I'm just going to scooch. Well, these are the timings, not that it really is real relevant to our discussion, but I just wanted to show you how the software optimized the timing, so you can kind of see a breakdown of how the timings would result. One thing I wanted to add is that if an improvement project would happen, it would probably run in the realm of about 150 to 300,000, depending on what we would find for condition of underground network. Also, the timing of the project itself. If it gets concentrated towards the end of the year, prices go up. So it would be an expensive endeavor to do. And anytime you go under have a larger project like that, you have to bring certain equipment up to standards, ADA law, things like that. The crash history, as you can see from what we have here, is small, but I did want to include that as part of this, because although the request has everything to do with long wait times and delays and things like that, I think safety can trump that sometimes. And if we would have a safety issue in this area, obviously that would be part of the discussion. Good news is that after a 5-year review of that, I did not find any I didn't find any crashes where adding a southbound left turn arrow would have prevented the crash. Were there crashes with the southbound and northbound movements? There were a few. There wasn't really all that much. Predominant crash history was east and west movements, which really should be no surprise. That's where the most traffic is, East Mason Street. But the good news is that I didn't find anything that would have been correctable by adding the arrow. So, conclusions. The existing option, not the best. The second option, again, not the best. The third option, what you saw from Figure 4, does result in having the most favorable results. And then the option, the low cycle option with the southbound arrow, does have its benefits. It does result in lower delay times, but I'm going to go back to this table, because I think what's critical to see here is the comparison between the optimized low cycle and then the southbound lead. So you see all of these, you got the northbound, eastbound, westbound, and the intersection all operating the best. But adding that southbound arrow does result in the best delay, and I should just say best delay. But the devil's in the details, as they say. If you look at the level of service is identical. So you may have slightly higher delay values, but the average motorist is probably not going to be able to notice much of a difference. You got 23.8, so you got 24 versus 32 seconds of delay here. That's going to be minor in respect of the motorist that's experiencing it. Level C is level C. And so you'll see that the actual levels of service do not change between them. I think that's very important, especially when you start looking the other way. When you start looking at the northbound, you have all levels of service B here, and it gets downgraded to a level of service C over here. Eastbound and westbound do, though, happen to operate at about the same levels of service. The other thing I thought that was interesting is that when we use some of the same timing parameters, we actually get a decrease in level of service down to D for that northbound movement. So, getting back to, oh, you have
I guess just from the existing level of service being only a couple C's were turned to B's, I mean, it's pretty insignificant, right?
It can be insignificant. However, I think the biggest thing to note here is that reducing the cycle length actually basically what the feeling it is for the motorist is that it has faster turnaround at the signal. You're not waiting as long. Now, the thing that's good with this is that during the peak hours, when you have that concentration of the school release, you're not getting that large queue backup with the lower cycle length, and they're able to go process 3, 4, 5 vehicles, and then let East Mason go, and then get back to the side street, just for that peak time. Now, the thing that's nice with the free operation is that if that time it doesn't need to be used, or there are no vehicles present, it won't even bring up the phase, or it'll truncate it and put time back onto East Mason Street. So the efficiencies, I think you'll actually see with a lower cycle length. No doubt in my mind. And these numbers, you're going from a level of service B, or from C to a B. That should be noticeable. Although you look at the delay numbers, they may be, the difference between them might be similar to what you see between some of these other options, but it's really that level of service and how the motorist is interpreting the signal operation and their delay time, I think is ultimately what's the most important. Because when people call me, they're not going, oh, I sat, well, some of them will say I sat there for 5 minutes, but, we know that's not true. But, they'll be like, I can't believe how long I sat there, It's, they're talking about a delay kind of thing. I'm talking about a quality and a level of service, which is linked to that, but people, I think, will notice a change from a level C to a B. So with that being said, I think I pretty much said all of my conclusions, and my recommendation is actually quite simple. Oops, I'm into the appendix here. Is to go with that low cycle optimized timing plan, which will reduce it down to about a 65-second cycle length. And I think that we try that and find out how that works. I think that you'll see lower queue lengths for certain. And I think from a qualitative and quantitative perspective from the motorists, I think that they will see an improvement. So that's my recommendation to the committee.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve Dave's recommendation? Or is there any questions first? We should ask.
Now that's with no capital improvements, right? That's just with using the existing that's there, or you said between 150 and 300,000 to get,
Right.
and that would be included.
The answer to that is options 4 and 5, with adding the arrows, would cost between 150 and 300,000. The option I'm recommending is simply an optimization with the existing equipment.
Okay.
So the only cost that's going to be realized to the city is my time, my electrician's time. We'll go out, make the changes, we'll observe the changes. Obviously if something needs to be adjusted in the field versus what the model is telling us, we'll make those slight adjustments. But at the end of the day, I agree with what the model's coming up with, that the lower cycle lengths will probably you'll see the benefit, and it's really just for that time period and that peak, and then it goes back to normal programming.
How long of a time frame is that?
Can you repeat?
How long of a time frame is it? In the afternoon then? When school is letting out, so it's
Correct, yes. It'll be, well, the analysis hour was 2:45 to 3:45. I think the programming starts at 2:30 p.m. It's like an extra 15 before and then extra 15 after. We do that just in case there's, early release, or if there's some other reason that, the school, that the peak may fluctuate.
that's the morning too, or just in the afternoon?
It is morning as well.
Chairman.
So we had a motion by Dan Dino.
Move approval of the recommendation of the
traffic engineer.
Second.
Motion been made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 1 and 2,
Were
3,
we
4,
supposed to-
5.
Mark it on here.
I'm just voting for everybody.
Oh,
That's what I did last time.
For 2, 3, 4, and 5, Dave, you want to run those together and say all that they pertain to the same?
Correct. Yes, items D2, D3, D4, and D5 are all connected or interrelated. If you want, did you want me to read them into the record and then give my recommendation?
Yeah, I probably should, I think.
Okay. Item D2, termination of 90-day trial period, removing the no parking zone on the south side of Mather Street from a point 50 feet west of Gray Street to a point 100 feet east of Gray Street. Item D3, termination 90-day trial period, remove the no parking zone on the north side of Mather Street from Gray Street to Roy Avenue. Item D3, termination 90-day, oh, I just read that one, didn't I? Item D4, termination 90-day trial period, establish and adopt by ordinance a no parking bike lane zone on both sides of Mather Street from Gray Street to Roman Street. Item D5, termination 90-day trial period, establish and adopt by ordinance a no parking zone on the south side of Mather Street from a point 50 feet west of Gray Street to Gray Street. Chair, you have the floor.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Been made, second.
second.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. F, next meeting, Monday, March 18th, 2019. Back in room 207 at 5:30. Everybody good in this room with
Sounds good.
any conflicts? Ray will not be here.
Chuck will be back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Chuck said he'd be back in March.
Right.
So, and I assume you will let the mayor's office know that we will be losing Chuck probably after March, I think.
Yeah.
Or,
Go on.
I didn't know that.
Yes, Chuck is going to depart us. And Ray, you had mentioned to me at some point.
Some
too,
point, but it's not a big deal. We're just putting our house
not
up for
a few
sale,
months.
so.
Okay, all right, so just so maybe let the mayor's office know that, one for sure, and down the road, you know, whenever Ray determines at the end of his service, so.
Which new mayor do you inform?
True. I said the mayor's office, so.
Yeah.
We'll probably meet twice before the election. Once.
One
Election
more.
16.
One more meeting.
One more meeting, okay, all right. One more meeting then, so. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion been made, seconded.
Second.
There you go.
We're adjourned. All right, we sort of made it through.
Okay.
Congrats.